ओके, वेरी नाइस निखिल, थैंक यू। सो मेरी ये जो मैं जिस सिचुएशन में हूँ, लिटिल बिट मेक शिफ्ट, सो आई होप द वॉइस विल कम थ्रू क्लियरली। माय रोल इज ओनली वेरी शॉर्ट, वेरी स्मॉल। सो आज बहुत एक पावन दिन है, पावन अवसर है, दैट वी आर गैदरिंग टू ऑब्जर्व लुम्पोर लियम्स 83rd बर्थडे। लाइक मैनी ऑफ अस नो, लुम्पोर लियम जो है उनको अजानचा जब वो अम, जब उनकी शारीरिक दिक्कतें बढ़ने लगी एंड इट बिकेम अपेरेंट कि वो जो एक एबट का रोल है उसको प्ले नहीं कर पाएंगे, तो मेरे ख्याल से 1982 या 83 में उन्होंने फिर लुम्पुर लियम को वाटपापोंग की वाटपापोंग को चलाने के लिए कहा। सो तब से और फॉर्मली 1993 से वो वाटपापोंग के एबट हैं। और उस पॉइंट से, उस दृष्टिकोण से, वो जो जिसको हम अजानचा संघ कहते हैं, उस उसको जो संघ है वो उनको अपना एक तरीके से स्पिरिचुअल लीडर, स्पिरिचुअल गाइड मानता है। जो आज हम कुछ सेक्शन सुनने वाले हैं, they are partly a commentary by students who have lived with him, and partly it's actually a direct reading of his own words. And जो sections हमें लगा बड़े यूजफुल हैं, वो खास करके वाले हैं जिसमें वो अपनी जो सबसे गहन इंटेंस साधना के का पीरियड था वाट पपोंग में 1969, उसका एक नैरेटिव है। Amongst other things, the aspects I felt were most informative और most educative rather, इस जो हम सुनेंगे उसमें, वो कुछ दो तीन उनके एटीट्यूड्स थे। सो आई थॉट आई अंडरलाइन देम, ताकि हम जब इस टेक्स्ट को सुने तो वी आर एबल टू लुक आउट फॉर दीज थिंग्स। अव्वल उनका जो एटीट्यूड था, वो जो उनकी परिस्थितियां थी, वाट पापोंग में काफी बहुत सारे मंक्स रह रहे थे, काफी सामूहिक गतिविधियां थी। कैसे उन्होंने उन परिस्थितियों को, जो भी उनका एक फोकस था, जो वो करना चाहते थे, उसमें बाधा नहीं बनने दिया, बल्कि उन्होंने कोशिश की कि उन परिस्थितियों का वो लाभ उठाएं अपनी साधना के लिए। तो एक तो ये एस्पेक्ट है। दूसरा एस्पेक्ट इसमें कई बार ये आता है कि किस तरीके से उनके जो अलग अलग एक्सपीरियंसेस हो रहे थे, उनका एक्सपीरियंस के प्रति जो एटीट्यूड था, आई थॉट दैट वाज रियली वेरी एजुकेटिव। सो मुझे लगा हम उसको भी थोड़ा समझने की, सुनने की कोशिश करें, किस तरह से वो एक्सपीरियंसेस में बह नहीं, वो कोशिश कर रहे थे कि वो एक्सपीरियंसेस में ना बह जाए। एंड ऑफ कोर्स देन देयर आर मेनी अदर एस्पेक्ट्स जो कि हम बाद में डिस्कस कर सकते हैं। और जो प्रेजेंटेशन का जो रीडिंग का फॉर्मेट है वो ये है कि शुरू में भावना भावना हैज एक्चुअली प्रिपेयर्ड दिस। सो लॉट ऑफ पुण्य टू हर, लॉट ऑफ मेरिट टू हर, एंड ग्रेटिट्यूड। पहले वो हमें शील गिव अस अ शॉर्ट समरी of Lumpur Liam's life from 1941 till 1969 when he comes to Wat Pabong। तो उसका एक छोटा सा समरी वो हमें सुनाएंगी। उसके बाद जो एक्चुअल रीडिंग है, जो 1969 का सारा वाट पापोंग में उनका प्रैक्टिस का जो तरीका है, शील देन रीड दैट आउट। So that will be a direct reading from his biography, and the first is a bit of a summary. Okay? So with that, I'll invite Bhavna, and may we all benefit from this, and maybe hold Lumpur in gratitude for many things that he has given us, but most importantly for this gift of dharma. Okay, Bhavna?
थैंक यू बंटी जी। आप सभी को नमस्ते। आई स्टार्ट शेयरिंग माय स्क्रीन। आई होप माय स्क्रीन इज विजिबल। यस, ओके। आप सभी को नमस्ते। तो जैसा कि बंते जी ने बताया, हम आज जो रीडिंग करने जा रहे हैं लुंगपो लियम के बायोग्राफी से, दैट इज मेनली रिलेटेड टू हिज प्रैक्टिस एट वाटपा पोंग। तो उनके प्रैक्टिस के बारे में जानने के पहले लेट अस हैव अ ब्रीफ समरी ऑफ हिज अर्लियर लाइफ डेज। So Longpor Liam, he was born on this day in the year 1941 in a village in northeast Thailand. In his village, he was known by people as unusually quiet and reserved person. While growing, he assisted his parents in farming, and at the age of 17, he set out to leave his home village in order to seek new experiences, where he worked in other regions of Thailand. And after 2 years, when he returned home, he did not take up farming, which he used to do in the initial days, and he decided to go forth as a novice at the age of 19. His intention when he decided to go forth as a novice was to spend a year of preparation for the commitment to fully become a bhikkhu at age 20. And for this, he entered the village monastery of his home village, Wat Ban Khok Chan. And in a short period of over 2 weeks, he got very well versed with the traditional monastic chants. And in 1961, Lungpor took higher ordination as a bhikkhu at the village monastery where he was staying. Initially, he had planned to stay in robes for 2 rains retreats, and after 2 years had already passed, he finally decided to not disrobe and continue his studies of the Buddha's teachings. So he lived his life, also the initial days before he went to Wat Pa Pong, in accordance with the monastic discipline and kept traveling in search of monastic training. And around the year 1967, he had traveled to Ubon province, where he overheard conversations of some lay people discussing Wat Pa Pong and the teachings of Luangpo Cha. Luangpo Liem felt an immediate interest to go and learn from the teaching there when he heard about Wat Pa Pong. And then he went there and he was very much impressed by Luangpo Cha's standards of practice. And these are his words. So he says, the whole style of monastery and the practice struck me as very natural. So, with the profound impact on him, he went back to get permission from his former teacher to live and train uh, sorry as in after his initial visit to Wat Pa Pong, he went back to his monastery. He got a formal letter of recommendation from there, and then he arrived at Wat Pa Pong in July 1969, and there he was admitted by Luangpo Cha after the initial period of observation. So that was a brief about his initial days. Now we are going to have the reading from his biography, which will be related to Longpor Lim's practice at Pat Papong. So when the rains retreat began, Luangpo Cha instructed all the monks to keep the standards of training very strictly. This meant to put full effort into sitting and walking meditation. Luangpo Cha expected every activity in the monastery to be done quietly with a sense of care and with respect for the fact that everyone must work together harmoniously. There was no place for selfishness or competitiveness. Longpur, already being of gentle, reserved, and quiet nature, felt that the peaceful, simple, and orderly routine he experienced in Wat Pa Pong supported the aspiration he upheld for his practice even more. And when we'll be going through the readings, there will be some content in italics. So those are Lungpo Lim's own words. So here he says, I was merely interested in training myself at all times. When the time came for the monks to determine to spend the rains retreat in Wat Pa Pong, Luangpo Cha asked everyone to be really motivated in the practice. That year, if I remember correctly, there were 47 monks in Wat Pa Pong, but I didn't actually know any of them. because I reckoned that each monk would eventually have to train and maintain his practice by himself. So I was only interested in the standards of practice and routines that genuinely concerned myself. At the time when Luangpur arrived in Bat Pong, life in rural northeast Thailand was still quite simple. Many modern developments had not reached the monastery yet. Luangpur relates, I did not have any belongings or requisites, only the bare necessities. Anything extra would be communal property. At most, I had candles and matches for use at night, enough for some light for practicing sitting or walking meditation, or for going to the toilet. You would use a candle to light the way. Even there weren't even proper umbrellas in those days. Only paper umbrellas made in Chiang Mai, which were given out one day. If you used these paper umbrellas in the rain, they gradually fell apart because the glue dissolved. You had to look after them and dry them in the sun after use. They were just about good enough to get through one rain's retreat without too much difficulty. I tried to look after mine well because Longpo had given it to me. I was very careful with it because I did not want to have to ask Longpo for a new one. It was good enough for one rainy season, although it actually did not really ward off the rain, only around the head. Down below one would get wet all the same. Other modern devices that weren't around yet in those days were alarm clocks. So, for waking up, Longpur needed to pay attention to the sound of the pickup truck collecting the villagers of Banglang village behind Wat Papong, who were going to the market in town around 2 or 3 a.m., or to the sound of night train passing by. Also, in a forest monastery, there were sounds of nature to wake one up, such as wild chickens or small owls hooting. But many times, Longpur got it wrong. He thought it was already 3 and time to get up, but actually, it was 1 or 2. So he decided to train his mind to be alert at any time, whether day or night. Before going to sleep, he determined to get up straight away as soon as he woke up, no matter what time was. Later, he experimented with various times of rest. For example, he changed the usual 10 p.m. sleeping time to about 8 p.m. and then got up at 11 at night or 1 in the morning. On other occasions, he would go to sleep at 1 a.m. and get up at 3. Luangpur explains, this kind of exercise is done in order to get familiar with how the body rests and not to indulge in the pleasant feeling of sleep. And it trains a sense of wakefulness and alertness in one's practice. Getting up early, Luangpur oftentimes arrived before anyone else in the main meditation hall. If no one was there yet, I would use the time to look at the skeleton hanging there, coming before the other monks at 2 or 2:30. It was very quiet in the meditation hall, a good chance to be on one's own. In those days, the hall had a tin roof, and all kinds of animals that go out looking for food at night would walk on it. For example, a chamot, a musk or anteater. It would make frightening noises. The cries of the chamot sound like a human being crying. I thought someone was there crying and was quite anxious. So I went out and had a look and saw that it was a chamois. Experiences like this help us to build up the facility to face and struggle with difficulties. In those days, the chanting took only 27 minutes, as it wasn't chanted with translation the way we do it today. Afterwards, we would quietly sit together in meditation. When the meditation was finished, we would clean the hall. While walking on arms round, I would avoid socializing with the group. I was scheduled to go to Bangor, which in those days wasn't such a pleasant route as it is today. The road was not good. It was full of mud, cow, and buffalo dung. This was normal at that time, so I didn't think much about it and just did my duty. Walking through the mud was a good test to see the reactions of my mind. I would establish mindfulness and start walking from the monastery to Bangor. I did not think about the past or the future and just stayed with the experience of awareness. I tried to follow the principle of restraint in accordance with the standards that the Buddha laid down in the monk's rules. Such practices are very good opportunities for training. But they just need to check do I need to pause or I can continue?
No, I think it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. On a regular day, the monks and novices at Wat Pong would finish the meal around 10 a.m. and then disperse and go back to their dwellings to practice on their own. Then Longpur says, in the afternoon, I did I did walking meditation until it was time to howl water, clean the meditation hall, the toilets, and sweep the baths. I used to clean the lay people's toilets. In those days, there were only two of them, but most of the people who used them had never used a toilet before. Sometimes they wouldn't flush with water, or they would leave a used twig in the toilet. Cleaning those toilets was good practice. Oftentimes, they were blocked, and I had to use my hands to reach and to clear them. Mostly, I didn't mind, but from time to time, I felt averse, thinking, why do these people rely on me rinsing and clearing the toilet for them? When the water ran out, one had to haul it from the well. Two people were needed to carry the water. There was no cart. Regarding the meal practices, Luangpol developed the habit of eating little and was often finished before the other monks. Luangpol relates, eating a lot makes us prone to the hindrances in meditation. We feel drowsy and sluggish. So, we eat simply for the sake of maintaining our lives from day to day. No more than that. In this way, we will physically feel light and agile, and our bodies will move swiftly and quickly. On the days when there were laxative fruits available in the afternoon, I wasn't interested. These things cause a lot of inconveniences because at night one will have to run to the toilet. The daily chores for the monks and novices at Wat Papong included extensive sweeping, which took up to 2 hours. At 4 p.m., a bell called everyone to gather for meditation. Longpur and a monk named Ajahn Mahasamran were always there ahead of time. After the sitting ended, Longpur didn't go anywhere else but returned directly to his hut. He barely wanted to see Longpo Cha. Usually, after the evening chanting was finished, some of the monks and novices would go to Longpo's hut to pay respects to him. I never really went because I saw that most of the time the reason for monks to go was to get some contact and be close to him. I didn't think that was right. So I thought, what about being close to Longpo actually means? It means to take on his standards of conduct and practice. So I really didn't go and see him very much. Sometimes he even asked, where did that monk go? That came from somewhere else. I never see him here. Still, I wouldn't go just to seek contact with him. I rather tried to rely on my own motivation to practice and asked myself, why did I come here? What do I really want? Do I want friendship or closeness to a teacher? In fact, I came because I wanted to practice. The place here is supportive of seclusion in every way, so I should go ahead practicing that way. If anybody says I am unfriendly, I don't mind. I just understand that to practice in this way is an obligation, a duty that we need to fulfill because all of us have decided already that that's what we are going to do. On the Buddhist observance days, I would undertake the special practice of refraining from lying down for the whole night. I could manage to do this fairly easily, just considering it as trivial thing to do. Day and night become what they are only through us, defining them according to certain experiences we associate with them. When one simply resets these associations, day can become night and night can become day. Could I really do this? Well, we were supposed to, so I tried. Sometimes I was able to go through the night without lying down quite easily, but sometimes I must admit there was a bit of exhaustion, though not to the extent of real dukh, as I took it as a normal experience. On some days, I looked for other occasions to have a rest. Not having slept all night, I sometimes had a rest during the day. Actually, to have a rest doesn't necessarily mean that one has to fall asleep. If one enters the peace of seclusion by meditating, one also rests and regains energy. The rains retreat is a time when the monks of a monastery usually intensify their efforts in practice. Longpor's high aspirations and motivation led to a powerful experience at the beginning of the rainy season, of which he describes: I experienced something stranger than anything I had ever experienced before. From the beginning of the rains retreat on up to the second month, I felt great confidence in the practice. There was no decline, no thoughts of discouragement at all in my practice. There were a few experiences of the mind getting involved with desires or defilements, but I could revert to contemplating the unbeautiful aspects of the body, taking either my own body or another person's body as an object of investigation, seeing it as something filthy and unworthy of craving and attachment. For example, I could see it as a skeleton, perhaps one that is walking about, or I could see the internal organs of a person cut up in pieces and taken apart. These things are rather disgusting and unbeautiful. I stare at the skeleton hanging in the meditation hall in a way that gives insight into the nature of material components of the body. I use the mental image of a skeleton as an object of contemplation. I would come up when sitting in meditation, a skeleton would appear, or after looking at corpses, visions of dead people, which triggered the reflection that likewise oneself will be the same. To reflect on the body like this alleviates sexual desire and attraction. It also makes one mindful, seeing how the mind relates to its objects. It frees one from being enmeshed in mind states that come from attaching to pleasure or displeasure with a certain mind object. The very moment the mind is a certain way, one realizes it immediately. This seemed sufficient for providing clear guidelines in my practice. From then on, the feeling of having to think about things in various ways became less. It felt as if the proliferation of the mind, or the thinking mind that goes in all directions, had no strength. It abated and retreated more and more until it was in a state which one can say wasn't dangerous anymore. Around the middle of the rainy season of the year 1969, Luangpo Cha announced to everyone that the communal morning and evening meetings for chanting and meditation were cancelled. And as for the communal work, there was only the daily water hauling. In those days, water was drawn from the well, and the water containers were carried by two people with the help of a pole over their shoulders to the various locations where the water jars needed to be filled up. This was done in silence, and after the work was done, Longpur went to have a shower and then proceeded with walking and sitting meditation. At times, it started to rain, but Longpur thought, never mind, and would keep on walking. Longpur says, if it rains, it rains. If I get wet, I get wet. So be it. What is wet can dry again. It didn't matter to me whether the sun would shine or rain would fall. I have no idea where my inspiration came from, but I didn't care about what would happen to me. I felt so happy in my heart to be doing what I was doing and really wanted to keep it up continually. It didn't cross my mind that there could be obstacles like feelings of doubts or discouragement. During this phase of practice, another change occurred. This change, speaking in proper scholarly terms, might be described as the experience of Vipassana Upkilesha, experiences which defile insight. I had a feeling of bliss and bright radiance within myself, lasting days and nights. The brightness was not like the light from the sun or from any other source of light, but it was something felt inside that has those same radiant qualities. I didn't get carried away with it, thinking that I was something special. I merely saw what was happening as an experience within the practice, happening in and of itself. I determined to be mindful and to not get lost identifying myself with being this or that. If one harbors such feelings of self importance, one is almost sure to go crazy from such an experience. This is what happens to some practitioners at this stage. They often start feeling special and superior to others, seeing everybody else as inferior to themselves. So I was determined to have mindfulness and awareness and not get involved with feelings of wanting and giving things personal importance. I was constantly telling myself experiences like this having arisen must cease. I kept this in mind and focused on what I was experiencing day and night. The issue of getting carried away with oneself can easily happen. The Buddha even gave it a name. defilements of insight, Vipassana Upagadesha. All this occurs within the context of Vipassana, insight meditation. It seems like when one enters the realm of Vipassana, one has to also enter the realm of Vipassana. That's the way things happen. But I didn't get lost or deluded. I didn't get carried away with myself. All I saw was a situation of arising, existence, and change. Most of the time, when I sat down meditating, I didn't sit all that long. During this phase, I sat for only a bit more than an hour. This seemed to be conducive for my body, and I never had any physical problems, no pains or other frustrating symptoms. Not having health issues, one can practice with ease. I continued doing the communal chores, but kept to myself while doing the work, looking at my own mind, my own feelings. Just the same as before. I was consciously aware of myself, observing and trying to watch myself, not only when I was awake, but also when sleeping. On September 9th, at around 10 p.m., Longford experienced an immense transformation in his mind. He had a feeling of extraordinary brightness and happiness, of which he reports. It is impossible to describe this kind of happiness to someone else. It is impossible to make someone else know and understand it. It isn't the happiness of getting things according to one's wishes, and it isn't the happiness that comes when things are agreeable. It's the kind of happiness that goes beyond these two. Walking is happiness, sitting is happiness, standing is happiness, and lying down is happiness. There is the experience of delight and joy all the time. Furthermore, one is able to uphold the knowledge in one's mind that this happen that this happiness arises completely by itself and eventually will vanish by itself. Both sukh and dukh in an experience like this are still entirely impermanent states. On the 10th, the mind became utterly peaceful, not at all exhausted, tired, or sleepy, but filled with clarity, radiance, and coolness, imbued with various kinds of delight and rapture. This experience lasted completely without reference to time. It was truly a kaliko, timeless. The same feeling continued on through all the four postures. Eventually, I asked myself, what is this? And the answer was a mode of the mind. It is like this in itself. Eventually, on the evening of the 10th, something that Longpor hadn't experienced before took place. Feelings of weariness, frustration, and fatigue took over. When he sat or walked, he felt sleepy. Even when he got up after having rested, the tiredness remained. In each posture, he felt completely exhausted. It got to the point where he fell asleep while he was doing walking meditation and ran into some thorns. His whole face became scratched and sore. At least the sleepiness will be gone now, Longpur thought. But the fatigue continued to remain as strong as before. Still, he endured, telling himself that it is natural to face obstacles in the practice, which to some extent everybody needs to pass. With these reflections in mind, he understood that he needed to look at this tiredness that previously hadn't been present. After all, this fatigue just arose, so it was impermanent too. Using this insight, he attempted to maintain awareness of the sleepiness. On the 11th, Luangpur experienced another change, namely, great peace and happiness returned to his mind. In all four postures, there was clarity and gladness. Simply being by himself was very pleasant. Nothing could intrude and stir up his mind. When working together with the monks and novices during chores, he wasn't interested in what they were talking or chatting about. Although he was together with others, he felt the same as if alone. On the evening of the 12th, the question arose in Nongpur: why do we actually practice? What's all this for? The answer that came up was: we don't practice for anything. We practice for the sake of practice. Whatever it will lead to doesn't matter at all. Our duty is to practice. So we practice and try to maintain mindfulness and awareness with it. In each moment, we keep teaching ourselves. Whatever we are doing, we try to have mindfulness and awareness. Whether we are walking up and down, we keep everything in a state of perfect balance. Finally, I felt I had done enough walking meditation for that day because I became quite tired and my feet already hurt very much. The bones of my feet felt like they were piercing through the skin, as I had been walking the whole day and night without rest. It is normal to experience painful feelings in the body if we overuse a single posture. But it is also normal that feelings change again. So I thought it's really enough walking meditation. For today, I went up to my hut, put on my robe with the right shoulder open and the outer robe folded over the left shoulder, sat down facing west, the same direction as Longpo Cha's kuti, thought of my teacher, and started meditating. The meditation was very peaceful, and the same reflection as before came up in Longpo's mind. We don't practice for anything. We practice for the sake of practice. Keeping this teaching in my mind, I kept on meditating. Normally, I would sit meditation until about 10 or 11 p.m. and then stop to have a rest. But on this day, I continued sitting until 2 a.m. without moving or making the slightest change in posture. With this experience of peace, the mind changed. The feeling of peacefulness sought up and pervaded throughout the whole body, as if something were taking hold of it. It felt cool, a coolness that suffused the whole body. So very cool, an experience of the whole body becoming completely light and at ease. The head felt so cool the whole day and night, as if there was a fan blowing over it. Cool, peaceful, quiet, and still. No experience of thoughts at all. Everything silent, completely. It felt totally quiet. The only experience left was that of utter peace and stillness. The body felt tranquil, cool, and light, whether sitting or lying down. There was this experience of coolness in every position. All worries, concerns, or similar thoughts from the thinking mind were totally gone. Thinking in this or that direction had ceased. All quiet, just like a forest, and there isn't the slightest sound of any bird singing. Truly quiet. No wind was blowing at all. Just ongoing tranquility and peace. It felt like there was no sankharas, no proliferations of the mind. All the suffering coming from the specific kleshas that had bothered me before, especially concerning the opposite sex and all the various kinds of ambitions that I had had. I don't know where they all disappeared to. Seeing somebody, I just had the feeling of seeing them as absolutely normal. To see a person as simply a person, just that much. No beautiful people, no ugly people, people simply as they were. This is the kind of peace and feeling of detachment that arose. I did not know what it was, but I also didn't care what it was. There was just knowing it is like this by itself in this way. This arises due to peacefulness and a detached mind. There isn't anything to be concerned about as far as how things exist. Concerning Dukh, I did not know what Dukh was like. Concerning laziness, I did not know what laziness was like. Questioning myself about laziness, there wasn't any. Questioning myself about Dukh, there wasn't any. The feeling inside my heart was exactly like this. I tried to recall and pin down that which is called Dukh. What is it? I really did not know. I only knew how they discern the meaning in terms of conventional language. Because dukh is something created by common conventions. When the mind has no dukh, there is no kind of convention that can exist in the mind. The experience of this feeling has lasted continuously since then. There has been no change, all the way up to the present day. Rongpo reflects on his practice during this period. Walking along the path of Buddha, he teaches us to focus on our awareness. Simply, this awareness is what we look at, experiencing and cultivating it day and night. Whether awake or asleep, we pay attention to ourselves continuously. Being in this mode indeed enables us to truly see, just as it expressed in this saying, observe and discover, tell what is what, and use things skillfully. This expresses what virtue, meditation, and wisdom are all about. One should make these qualities become automatic, become synonyms of each other without the need to distinguish between them. If there is nothing but the experience of a complete maturing of these three, this will naturally give rise to right view and right understanding, which brings about peace and seclusion. When one experiences peace, seclusion comes naturally, and this sense of detachment gives rise to a complete cooling down. Regarding conditioned phenomena and the physical world, these are merely external things. They are the manifestations of the elements and follow the laws of nature in their way. Yes, that is all about his practice at Wat Papong. I'll stop here. Um, so वो जो रीडिंग थी उसमें towards the end there was a line which says the experience of this feeling has lasted continuously since then. There has been no change all the way up to the present day. Does that mean he has attained at least the stream entry level?
आई मीन आई थिंक मैं इसको जिस तरीके से समझता हूँ वो ये है कि वो डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं उनकी मनोस्थिति क्या है। और हमें स्क्रिप्चरली पता है कि जो विभिन्न स्टेजेस हैं वो कैसे डिस्क्राइब किए जाते हैं। सो आई थिंक वी कैन ड्रॉ कंक्लूजन। दैट्स एज मच एज इज अप्रोप्रिएट फॉर मी टू से। यदि मेरे में दुख का भाव नहीं जाग रहा है जैसे वो बता रहे हैं, तो वो अपने आप में मुझे कुछ बताता है।
एक और लाइन थी where he was talking about the three qualities, virtue, meditation, and wisdom. And then he was saying that we should make these qualities become automatic. So if some elaboration can be done around these three qualities, virtue, meditation, and wisdom.
ये एक्चुअली लुम्पोलियम के साथ एक मसला ये भी है ना, और हमारे कई थाई टीचर्स के साथ है कि वो अ, शब्दों का और भाषा का प्रयोग काफी एक पिक्यूलियर ढंग से करते हैं। लुम्पोलियम के साथ और भी ये हो जाता है क्योंकि कई सारी जो चीजें वो जो हम अंग्रेजी में पढ़ रहे हैं वो उन्होंने जो प्रांतीय लाओशियन भाषा है उसमें डिस्क्राइब की है। तो उसमें बहुत ज्यादा, आई मीन आई कैन स्पेक्युलेट कि वो क्या कह रहे हैं, है ना? पर तो नहीं, सो एनीवे, सो जस्ट टू फिनिश आंसरिंग दैट क्वेश्चन, तो इसीलिए वो स्पेसिफिक चीज किसका जिक्र कर रहे हैं उसको हम कोशिश कर सकते हैं जो हमारी सामान्य समझ है इन तीन चीजों की। अ, मैंने इसको इस तरीके से देखा कि जो अहम बात है ना मेरे लिए उसमें, वो जो 9 सितंबर, 10 सितंबर, 11 सितंबर के एक्सपीरियंसेस को डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं, फिर उसका एक सार निकाल रहे हैं, वो तो खैर चलिए एक चीज है। मैं उसको अपने लिए एक इंस्पिरेशन की तरह देखता हूँ, मोटिवेशन की तरह देखता हूँ। किस चीज के मोटिवेशन, किस चीज का इंस्पिरेशन की, उससे पहले वो जो डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं, दोज थिंग्स, दोज अप्रोचेस, दोज एटीट्यूड्स, दोज प्रैक्टिसेस, जो कि हमारे लिए हमें इतनी मुश्किल लगती हैं, कम से कम मुझे तो बहुत मुश्किल लगती हैं। किस तरीके से जब सामूहिक काम चल रहा है तो भी वो अपने आप को एक तरीके से अम, उस सामूहिक माहौल में बहने नहीं दे रहे, फॉर एग्जाम्पल। और इस तरह से बहुत चीजें उन्होंने डिस्क्राइब की। मुझे इस सारी रीडिंग से और लुम्पोलियम के साथ रहने में जो मेन चीज मैंने समझी, सीखी, वो ये है एक्चुअली कि वो जो उनका अल्टीमेट, जो भी उनका एक्सपीरियंस है, जो उन्होंने यहाँ शब्दों में डिस्क्राइब करने की कोशिश की है, मैं कोशिश कर सकता हूँ उससे जूझूं, उसको समझने की कोशिश करूँ, आई कैन डू दैट। मुझे उससे ज्यादा हेल्पफुल ये लगा, और मैं उसको करूंगा तो वो एक स्पेकुलेशन ही रहेगा। मुझे उससे ज्यादा हेल्पफुल ये लगा कि वो जो कारण थे that culminated in whatever he is describing and however we interpret it, मैं अगर वो कारण जो कि मुझे समझ आते हैं, जो मुझे पता है, जो मेरे जीवन में भी जिनको करने का मेरे पास स्कोप है, सो to not directly answer your question but to share my perspective on this, that is really my perspective. तो उन कारणों को मैं करने की कोशिश करूं, keeping trying to keep the attitude as much in the center as possible, trying to use all circumstances, all situations as means to cultivate that attitude. So really, that would be my response. I mean, of course, if there's someone else who'd like to say something, then that's you're welcome. But that's how I have learned to relate to Napoleon's teachings.
थैंक यू बंटी जी।
मुझे कुछ ऐसी फीलिंग हुई कि Napoleon was probably born to practice. It came so naturally to him, and perhaps whatever has been read out, because it has been read out very beautifully already, uh, indicates, at least to me, that he probably carried a lot of armies with him. Just my observation.
जी सुरेन जी, बिल्कुल। मुझे भी ऐसा ही लगता है। अब जैसे जब हम उन गांव में जाते हैं, अनफॉर्चुनेटली आई हैड अ चांस टू एक्चुअली लिव देयर, जहाँ पे ये सारा प्रकरण बता रहे हैं वो, तो वहां भी वो लोग ये बताते हैं कि यार ये तो आप लोग आज कह रहे हो, इस प्रकार का इनका जो एटीट्यूड था, लहजा था, तो शुरू से ही था। It was never so engaged with things. So to that extent, you're absolutely right. Obviously, वो तो कुछ पास्ट एफर्ट प्रैक्टिसेस का वो है। बट यू सी द पॉइंट इज कि हमें पता है थ्रू द टीचिंग्स, टू द बुद्धास टीचिंग्स, कि वो एफर्ट्स प्रैक्टिसेस क्या हैं, है ना? तो एक तरीके से, अगेन, फॉर मी व्हाट वाज मोस्ट एंड व्हाट कंटिन्यूज टू बी मोस्ट इंस्पायरिंग एंड हेल्पफुल इन रिस्पेक्ट टू लुम्पो लियम इज टू रिमाइंड माई सेल्फ कि यार वो सारी चीजें मैं भी कर सकता हूँ। और उनका जो जीवन है या उनका जो वर्तमान स्थिति है, वो एक इंस्पिरेशन है कि वो कारण, वो बीज, वो एफर्ट्स मैं भी वर्तमान में डालूं, Yeah, to be able to experience whatever fruits are to be appropriately experienced. अब देखिए ना इसमें वो बार बार his own mind, you can see two voices in his mind, he's describing it actually. एक प्रकार की voice आती है and it says something something, and then the other voice comes and he describes it as, and then the answer came.
Mm.
So I think we can all train ourselves in that manner. So to me, that's really the thing. But yeah, I'm absolutely with you. It does seem that there is a lot of past cultivation, and in that sense, there is a lot of past cultivation for all of us. Otherwise, at I don't know, 6:52 on 5th November, how is it that you are sitting here doing this?
Thank
So
you.
Regarding the common question which Bhavna asked, since we have been involved in studying it in a formal manner, these three words which you said, which are written there as virtue, meditation, and wisdom, essentially are Shil, Samadhi, and Anya. That's actually simple equivalents of them in the formal language. And the detailed experience which we culminated and is continuing now will, in the formal language of the scripture, be defined as unshakable Chetu Vimukti. That is not shaken, freedom of the mind which has not been shaken for so long. Just translating it in formal language so that you can derive appropriate inputs.
थैंक यू सर। एक और ऑब्जर्वेशन थी मेरी, एज इन फ्रॉम द रीडिंग इट इज वेरी एविडेंट दैट ही हैज अ लॉट ऑफ सेल्फ रिस्ट्रेंट, he practices lot of self restraint, मतलब that generally becomes very difficult, मतलब अपने daily life में he was doing it very beautifully.
You have to meet him to see that it is true. He's likely to come in February next year, so you can keep that as a target to meet him.
I mean, again on the issue of self restraint, आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रही हो. ऑब्वियसली जब हम उसको एक कैप्सूल में पढ़ते हैं तो हमें इस तरह से लगता है, और वो बात ठीक भी है. बट अगेन आई थिंक जो उसके कॉजेज हैं, इसी वो आई मीन डिड द हाउ डिड द सेल्फ रिस्ट्रेंट कम अबाउट. इट्स नॉट समथिंग मैजिकल, इट्स नॉट डिसेंडेड फ्रॉम हेवन सो टू से. और उसकी जो भूमिका है, उसके जो कॉजेज हैं, उसके जो प्रिलिमिनरी एटीट्यूड्स और एफर्ट्स हैं, वो यहाँ पे दिए हुए हैं. सो आई थिंक अगेन जस्ट ब्रिंगिंग इट बैक टू माई सेल्फ, जब भी मैं उनके बारे में या तो स्मरण करता हूँ या पढ़ता हूँ, या व्हेन वी लिसन टू समथिंग फ्रॉम हिम, दैट्स रियली द थिंग दैट हेल्प्स मी, कि अगर वो चीजें जो वो करते आए हैं, जो उन्होंने यहाँ डिस्क्राइब किया है, या वो एटीट्यूड्स जो उन्होंने रखे हैं, मैं वो कोशिश करूं, या देन द सेम fruits can be experienced. So it's of course difficult, but in his thing he just keeps coming back to it again and again. और जो उनके वो डेली टीचिंग्स देते हैं, you'll be very surprised how simple and how basic those teachings are. He's just every day encouraging, yeah, just keep doing it. Sure, you'll have difficulty, you'll fail and fall, and that's okay. And then you start doing it again. That's really the key there. Restraint वाली teachings, और जिस पे बहुत बल देते हैं इस ड्यूटीज, जो जो मेरी वर्तमान परिस्थितियां हैं उसमें जो मेरी ड्यूटीज हैं उनको मैं निभाऊं. एंड दैट इज देन माई साधना. आपने देखा ना कैसे उन्होंने डिस्क्राइब किया, क्लीनिंग टॉयलेट्स और स्वीपिंग और वट एवर, है ना. उनकी परिस्थिति में दोज वर द ड्यूटीज. हम सबकी परिस्थितियों में हमारी अपनी अपनी ड्यूटीज हैं. तो उन ड्यूटीज को उस एटीट्यूड से करें जो उन्होंने यहाँ हमें बताया. नॉट गेटिंग कैरिड अवे with the content of that situation. Yeah, then restraint comes about. That is in fact restraint actually.
Uh, Banteji, we read that practice for the sake of practice. So bring that to the layman application point of view, because we practice to take out some of the day-to-day issues, challenges, what we go through it. How do we really relate that practice for the sake of practice here in that case?
I'll share with you what I understand, and then I'll invite Dhar Saab to also share any specific uh, uh, anything that I may miss. As I understand, he is using that. Look at the context. You know? At that period, he is going through a lot of intense experiences. So what he is doing, so as to not get caught up with the content of the experiences, so as to not get caught up with the projection of outcomes. You know, I understand he's invoking that part of that panya, that in this period, in this moment, I just have to do this, whatever practice he's doing, and not get caught, not have tanha for either those specific experiences and not proliferate around them. Oh, I have become this, and so on and so forth, and not get caught up with outcomes. Oh, if this happens, then this is what it means. That is what it means, and so on. So that's how I'm interpreting. That's how I'm understanding it. That it's that aspect of panya, and that in layman's terms, we are all subject to that, isn't it? I'm doing such and such so that I become such and such. Versus, okay, I find myself in a particular. So taking your example, in a particular job, and that entails these roles, I play those roles. My playing of those roles is not incumbent upon any projected outcome I get from it. Sure, as part of my role, I'll get a salary and I'll have a designation. Sure, that's fine. But that's not the driving force. It's that panya, that I'm playing a certain role within within the given circumstances, and then the tanha for outcomes is really not there. So that's how I bring it. I would bring it to what it means for us as in our day-to-day lives. Nasa, would you like to offer something more to that?
Very fine. If you read between the lines, you can see that he has the clarity of what to do. So that is the key point which I noticed. At every issue, there is a clarity of what should be done, and that is done without any aversion, or if the task is unpleasant, without any aversion, and if the experience is pleasant, without any grief. So that much of wisdom is already existing. And the most interesting part was how he handles the sleepiness. He just keeps on walking. Even if he entered into a bush and hurt his body, he said, fine, very good, now I will not sleep. Now, how many of us can do that? That shows he's clear that practice means I don't have to give up. It's arising of the defilement, arising of the nivarana. So when there is a nivarana, he knows what is the way out of it, and he does that. Come what may. So when we say practice for the sake of practice, it presumes you have the clarity of what the practice is. That's the Dhamma Patipada. If you use the Buddha's words, you are practicing according to Dhamma because Dhamma is totally clear to you. That's but many times we just keep on doing whatever feels convenient, and we keep on doing that, and think we are just practicing. So there's a difference which should not be misunderstood.
Sir, we practice with certain intention on day-to-day basis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly.
Hmm.
So he also had an intention implicit in the whole practice,
Hmm.
isn't it?
Hmm.
It was not obsessive. It was not all the time remembered. Ye hona chahiye, ye hona. Obviously, all that was the intention. Why did he leave home?
Hmm.
Why should he become a monk? Why should he come to Ajahn Chah? He was in another monastery for many years. So there is a clarity of intention, isn't it? It's not explicitly put out because there's no obsession with that.
Hmm.
For us, we need to remind ourselves again and again because we get very tracked in different intentions. If we refer back to Buddha's teaching, we can see it again and again being outlined. So as Professor Prasad mentioned, he had a tremendous farming, obviously. So he has clarity on what is to be done in the whole life. He doesn't have to make an intention to do that because it's clear. It is embedded in his past lives and in the environment where he's living. Every village in Thailand is a monastery. So it's all part of the environment there. That's how I look at it.
So, if there are no more questions, I would request Bhanteji for closing.
So शाम को we'll have another opportunity to go through this again. And if we like, हम दिन में जो भावना ने पढ़ा, और actually the biography is longer than this. ये उन्होंने एक specific section निकाल के हमें सुनाया है, हम उसको पढ़ सकते हैं. और उसका लिंक निखिल ने भेज ही दिया था. आप आज दिन में निखिल एक काम और कर सकते हैं. जो आपको मैंने कल ईमेल भेजी थी, उसमें जो भावना ने केवल इंग्लिश के सेक्शंस एक्सेप्ट किए हुए हैं. उनके बायोग्राफी में थाई में भी काफी कुछ है. सो मे बी यू कैन जस्ट सर्कुलेट द पीडीएफ जो आपके पास पड़ा होगा, जिसमें केवल अंग्रेजी सेक्शंस हैं. सो इफ पीपल लाइक दे कैन लुक एट दैट एज वेल. और फिर शाम को विल हैव अनदर अपॉर्चुनिटी टू मीट अगेन. आराम सम्मा संबुद्धो भगवान् बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादयामि. साक्षातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि. सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि.
Bhanteji को 3 बार नमन है. प्रथम नमन
द्वितीय नमन, तृतीय नमन। Thank you.
Thank you. Bhavna, thank you for an excellent reading. Beautifully done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhavna ji.
Bante ji, just out of curiosity, you can share Longpor Liam का वहाँ ऐसे daily schedule कैसा रहता था? What kind of things he used to do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so it's currently quite varied. कुछ तो उनकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव जिम्मेदारियां हैं वाट पापोंग के सिलसिले में. जनरली व्हाट आई फाइंड रिमार्केबल, कई बार आपने सुना होगा, धर साहब ने भी ये कहा है कि जो बेसिक प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो अ, जो बहुत पहुंचे हुए टीचर्स हैं वो चालू रखते हैं एज अ एज एन एग्जाम्पल. तो एक चीज़ जो मैंने ऑब्जर्व की, दैट उनका जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस सुबह का जो दिन शुरू होता है really still starts extremely early, sometimes as early as quarter to three, and for a for several hours in the morning he's just on his own, just quiet on his own. So in fact, as a digression, मेरे लिए वो सबसे valuable क्षण हुआ करते थे when it's just him and me in his kuti and no one's talking, he's just sitting quietly, and I'm trying to sit quietly. Typically he starts having visitors by about maybe 7ish, and somebody will, उनके कुछ जो ले upataks हैं, they'll bring him little small porridge or something in the morning, and then by about 8 is our main meal. So he'll turn up there, maybe offer a talk, offer a blessing, or after the meal he'll either rest, or जैसे कि उनकी एक अपनी शुरू से ही प्रवृत्ति रही है, which is to work on whatever project is ongoing. काफ़ी सारा, जैसे आपने सुना ही होगा, कंस्ट्रक्शन वहाँ पे खुद ही करते हैं, and he is the lead sort of constructor. जो बुक आपने अभी देखी भावना, उसमें आपने देखा होगा कई कई जगहों पे उनकी पिक्चर्स हैं एक्चुअली डूइंग फिजिकल वर्क. And so typically that would last till evening, and बीच में he might have a break, sit down, drink a little something. और अगर कोई मिलने आते हैं, जो अरण्य विहार ट्रस्ट से भी हम लोग जब गए थे 16-17 में, तो he just meet us at the work site. वहाँ एक मैट बिछी होगी, and he'll speak to whoever comes. और टिपिकली उनके साथ 2 या 3 या 4 जो भी उनके साथ monks रह रहे हैं, they'll be doing something or the other. For him, the evening really is having some allowable drink and whatever else there is, and having a long leisurely bath. So Lumpur Liem ke saath, the bath is another, what's the correct word for it? It's an engagement that many of us have great honor in participating. So he's basically sitting in a lakdi ka tub sa banaya hua hai, and a few of us are scrubbing him or pouring water over him and so on. So that's also a process where that gives us a lot of proximity. And after that, typically he'll receive visitors. जिस monastery में है उसके कुछ monks आएंगे. ये वहाँ अच्छी तरह से पता है कि अगर उनसे मिलना है, बातचीत करनी है, खासकर कि कुछ कुछ भी जो भी अहम बातें हैं, एबट्स जो आसपास वाले हैं वो उस समय जाते हैं मिलने उनसे. So in his kuti he'll receive visitors and retire by about 9, if very late then 10. So that's really typically how it is. And there'll of course be exceptions. Some days is work all day. कई बार it goes on till night. कई दिन functions होते हैं. आजकल functions काफी हो गए हैं वहाँ पर. So there are exceptions, but this would be really a typical day.
Thank you, Master.
जी, please go ahead.
एक फ्रेज जो हुई है realm of vipassana, what does it mean? वो 9th सितंबर के एक्सपीरियंस
Yeah.
में नुपुर ने कहा.
Darsab, I was going to invite you to speak about that. It seems to be some grammatical spin on that. So please tell us.
Teaching में आता है vipassana upkreshna. When you combine it, A combined with U, it becomes vipassana plesa. So he has put it only those words together to say कि विपश्यना में जो experiences होते हैं वो क्लेश बन जाते हैं अगर उसको हम wisdom से ना देखें. कहते हैं कि विपश्यना करते करते उस क्लेश में पड़ने का पूरा चांस रहता है कि हम उसी में बह जाए. एक्सपीरियंस ये हो गया उसी में बह गए तो साधना जो है अवरुद्ध हो जाती है. That's what he means. That's how I understand it.
Thank you.
Sir, in the text it is mentioned meditating, observing others' body. Can we understand, is it looking at the skeleton and doing meditation or something other way of doing it?
Those Lumpur wells we can
Darsab, sorry, at least I missed what you said.
Yeah, we could not hear you, sir.
I said Bhanteji knows Lumpur well, so he would be able to tell what he means. But the way I understand it is meditation on the 32 parts or the, but maybe Bhanteji has something more.
One of the practices जो मैंने सुनी है that I've heard not just him but others speak about is that when and also Dharsab also this time referred to it. No, not this time, maybe the vast previous to this.
Last was, yeah.
When you repeatedly contemplate, for example, I'll just work with skeleton, ठीक है ना? When you repeatedly, so one of my fellow monks also was doing this, so he explained this to me. कि भाई, when you're walking, sitting, whatever, what for your own self, you're trying to sort of feel the skeleton at all times. So at all or as much as you can, you're trying to experience all of your motions in terms of your own skeleton. And similarly, then when you're seeing others, you're trying to, for the want of a better word, imagine, that instead of that body, there is just a skeleton. So I haven't done it myself, but what I understand is if you do it really repeatedly, then it really begins to actually manifest like that. So that's really how I understand it. And of course, you can extend it to other body contemplations also. So you can do it like he mentioned it in the text. No? You can do it in terms of corpses, or can do it in terms of 32 parts. I heard another person mention to me that one creative way of doing this for somebody, some other monk, was that he started projecting or imagining the so we have the skin outwards and the internal organs. He started imagining the other way around, the internal organs outside and the skin inside, and to try to see anybody that he encounters and himself as if it is like that. So the thing is that if you do it repeatedly, then that actually begins to happen. I think it's a little bit like casinos also, no? If you repeatedly keep doing it, then that image really becomes very real in your mind. So that's how I understand it. That's why there's a technicality. Please go ahead and or not technicality. If you have like your own experiences with casino, so you can explain that.
Yeah, you can do that. If you take any external object and focus on it for a long time, its mental image stays with you. And once you've developed in those practices, anything which you see for some time, you close your eyes and it presents before you, and you can concentrate on it. You can, for example, if you are able to sit your closed eyes and you have see the Bodh Gaya temple and the periphery, you can sit here and go around and do the circumambulation of Bodh Gaya in your mind. So these things are possible with samadhi practice.
जी, please go ahead. Surenji?
So I have not read the complete biography, so I don't know whether my observation is really correct. I mean, he has talked about defilements very briefly, but not really extensively, as if that is the main objective. In fact, he says the main objective is of practice is to practice. So that is one thing that perhaps one needs to understand what is meant by that precisely. Secondly, again, there is no mention of jhanas, no mention of liberation in some sense. So that's very remarkable. But obviously, all this is implied in the background somehow. Just an observation I thought I'll share.
Ji. Surenji, actually, if we look carefully at what he's describing, especially in the 9th to 13th period, and then you can actually see many of those factors, those signs, they many of the Thais, like I said in the morning, they don't necessarily use the same language, but I think the description of those experiences is actually quite obvious, quite clear what's going on.
That's what I thought.
Mm.
Thank you.
It was written while reading. It's written peace of seclusion. That is the first. That is the characteristic of first jhana.
Okay.
Exactly, this is the word. If you see
That's
the
right.
description of first
That's
jhana,
right.
exactly this word is there.
Okay.
And then second jhana onward is peace of concentration. You get tranquility through concentration. First jhana, you get tranquility through seclusion. So he's using the, I mean, because he's speaking in Thai, people are translating it and they're not using the scriptural nomenclature. So he's describing the experience in simple words so that people can understand. But you can, if you read between the lines, it becomes clear.
Ji. Thank you.
जी राजेंद्र जी पूछ लीजिए पूछ लीजिए राजेंद्र जी आप पूछ सकते हैं
ये एक जगह मैं पढ़ रहा था we don't practice for anything, we practice for the sake of practice. Whatever it will lead to doesn't matter at all. Our duty is to practice. So we practice and try to maintain mindfulness and awareness. I wanted you to please explain it, I mean, in the context. But first dhyan, second dhyan, third dhyan, fourth dhyan. तो इस तरह की जो इन्होंने ये सेंटेंस बोला है इसका
तो वे भी ये डिस्कस हुआ था एंड जैसे आई थिंक एक चीज ये है ना दैट वी मस्टंट एज्यूम दैट एवरीबडी स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम जीरो तो थ्रू past practices इट बिकम्स वेरी क्लियर कि भाई क्या करना है ना। तो हमेशा वो क्रम, हम एज बिगिनर्स हमारे लिए वो क्रम दोहराना और वो बेसिक्स दोहराना ज़रूरी है। एक बार वो स्पष्ट हो गया है, देन जैसे कहा जाता है ना कि प्रैक्टिस इज गाइडेड बाय सती एंड पन्या, और वो बिल्कुल यहाँ पे बिल्कुल स्पष्ट दिख रहा है। उनकी सती डिटेक्ट कर रही है क्या क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस हो रहे हैं, और पन्या के माध्यम से वो उन एक्सपीरियंसेस को इज एबल टू लेट देम गो। तो उनको क्लैरिटी है कि भाई क्या करना है। सो इन हिज केस ही डजंट हैव टू repeat that to himself. I mean, one of the things that often teachers caution us is that when we read biographies or experiences of great people, great monks, we mustn't, we should be careful to not directly extrapolate it to ourselves. क्योंकि हम शायद एग्जैक्टली वहाँ नहीं हैं। तो एक तरीका तो इसको यूज करने का एज इंस्पिरेशन, एज मोटिवेशन है, रादर दैन एज स्पेसिफिक टेक्निकल डिटेल कि वो ये कर रहे थे तो मैं भी ये करूं, वो शायद वन टू वन लागू ना हो।
Thank you. Thank
Would you like to add something? That's up. I'm basically picking up from what you said in the morning, so I'm grateful for that clarity.
बिल्कुल ठीक, it suffice.
I was just thinking in my mind that when I went through the reading, that he was always so alert or observant that I think he did not ever go off the path. He did not let defilements ever overcome him. तो उसके लिए कितना प्रैक्टिस, कितना एफर्ट लगता होगा, दैट इज व्हाट आई वाज थिंकिंग।
एक्चुअली उन्होंने अपनी चैलेंजेस भी शेयर की हैं असल में। शायद इस बायोग्राफी में भी शुरू में, शुरू का जो सेक्शन है उसमें कुछ है।
इनिशियली ही हैड मेंशन, यस, बट आई थिंक ही वाज एबल टू गेट ओवर इट।
और उसमें भावना, हाँ, और जो उनकी और जो दो किताबें हैं ना, शांति, स्पेशली जो शांति नाम की किताब है, उसको अगर हम देखें तो जो एक क्वालिटी निकल के आती है इज टू is for whatever hindrances there are to for them to come, and sometimes one of course succumbs, but then to come back again. So I think that's the main thing that at least I get from his life stories, and of course life stories of other great beings and great monks. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो नहीं आएगा, पर वो they are able to sort of come back and keep going, so to say, not let that defeat, not वो जो भी hindrance है, जो भी defilement है, not let that knock them down for a long period. In fact, in that respect, Ajahn Chah's stories are actually even more inspiring in terms of the sort of defilements he's describing, and he's describing them very explicitly, actually. But yeah, you're right. I think it's again, for me, it's very inspiring. कि देखिए ऐसा actually it's quite possible, and he's living in very basic conditions. So even more reason that many of us can pick up this inspiration and keep going, basically.
एक बहुत ही आई ओपनिंग स्टेटमेंट इसमें आई है कि हम जो इस एक्सपीरियंस को दुख बोलते हैं वो भी हम ही ने कन्वेंशन बनाई है, सिर्फ इट इज ओनली कन्वेंशन। इट इज ए वेरी आई ओपनिंग स्टेटमेंट फॉर मी। इट्स ओनली कन्वेंशन। I think it can help us to detach ourselves very fast.
पूछ लीजिए।
ये जो 9 सितंबर का उन्होंने जो एक्सपीरियंस बताया और उसके ऑनवर्ड्स 13 तक एक्सपीरियंस बताया, इसमें कोई अटैचमेंट नहीं है, कोई अवर्जन नहीं है टू द एक्सपीरियंस, बट क्या पन्या की वजह से जो एक नेचुरल क्यूरियोसिटी या एनालिसिस या जजमेंट उठता है, डज दैट आल्सो गेट साइडलाइंड? एज इन, बाय साइडलाइन आई मीन इट डजंट इन द वे, तो पन्या इस लेवल तक डेवलप हो जाती है दैट the natural curiosity or natural judgment of an experience also is put aside. Is it like that? Neither one naturally tends to question कि अच्छा ये क्या हो रहा है.
I mean, I'll speak from जैसे मेरा experience and then we can invite others to chime in. It also happens with us ना कि कुछ experiences whether formal उसमें या in day to day life when we try to live dharmically, um, if repeatedly some things come up and we are handling them repeatedly, you know, then we really know how to do it. Then it doesn't remain something that needs repeated analysis and description and so forth. तो अब ऐसा नहीं है that September में suddenly for the first time he's starting to experience these things. I mean, of course, some experiences must be unique, obviously, but जो उनकी समाधि प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो और जगहों पे उन्होंने डिस्क्राइब की हैं, so he's at them for quite some time, and you can see the depth of पन्या के जब उतने significantly elating, pleasant, remarkable experiences भी हो रहे हैं, he's still able to, you know, bring it back. And you can actually see he's describing it in terms of two voices in his mind, है ना? एक तरफ तो वो एक्सपीरियंस और एक तरफ फिर एक आवाज उठती है, so to say कि ये भी उठा है, ये भी चला जाएगा. So clearly it's that. And we at least we can we can see it in our lives as well. कि कई बार कई चीजों में if some things come up again and again and we have developed the skill to handle them, तो उसको हम बिना ज्यादा प्रोसेसिंग एनालिसिस के ऑन द गो कर लेते हैं. Because that's how I understand it. Would you like to add something, Dharsab, or anybody else? Yeah.
Just because it was mentioned,
within our experience. Yeah? All this is within our experience, that when we practice something for a long time, it becomes a part of our natural response. We don't have to think about that.
No, because it was mentioned specifically, I just took it that it was for the first time इतना deep ध्यान हुआ कि वो, but obviously पुराना कुछ रहा होगा, that didn't strike me कि ये पुराना हो. I just thought mentioned है specifically, तो maybe पहली बारी हुआ, फिर हट गया, फिर contrast हुआ, फिर अलग हुआ. I mean the same thing, deeper वो rose again. तो वो मेरा वो है, my bad. I didn't consider that पहले भी हुआ होगा.
You must remember that 69 is 8 years after his ordination. He has been ordained for 8 years till 1969. And he has studied all the scriptures and passed all the exams which are supposed to be done by monks, on the highest exams. So he has at least complete knowledge of the scripture, the theory, and everything. And obviously, a person like him would have practiced accordingly.
But sir, scripture study और वो तो थोड़ा theory हो जाता है ना, practice.
8 साल practice किया ना, 8 साल with his intensity of practice, you can see how intensely he practices. You can get a picture from this small description. So when things become clear, you don't need to go through the whole chain again and again. It becomes quite obvious. we need to remember the raft analogy. The teaching is like a raft. We used wisely, not to be carried on us all the time. So when you have practiced and experienced some things again and again and are sure about it, then you don't need to go through all the steps.
Yeah, I think he was saying that we don't need to go through all the nuts and bolts again and again. That's what he was saying. Sorry, that's how I just finished what you were saying.
Some noise in the background.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Also, I think it becomes very obvious when he says that he never wanted to go and talk to Ajahn Chah or make his presence felt or go closer to him, but he was there for a purpose, and that purpose was that he practices and learns much more rather than be noticed by Ajahn Chah. I mean, that's what I understand. And that makes it very obvious to me here. He was not seeking that kind of attention, but he was trying to reach the goal that he had set for him.
बिल्कुल. और इनफैक्ट उनकी एक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक अभी भी है कि नॉट सीकिंग अटेंशन वाली एंड ऑल्सो नॉट गिविंग अटेंशन. तो उनकी मोनेस्ट्री में उनके साथ रहने में इस तरह का कोई बहुत अपॉर्चुनिटी या भाव आता नहीं है कि जो इनके इर्द गिर्द घूम रहे हैं, जो साथ रह रहे हैं, they have some special whatever privileges वगैरह. He doesn't really encourage. It's just not that personality. I mean, often उनके साथ बातचीत करना केवल भाषा की वजह से मुश्किल नहीं, बट बिकॉज ही सो रेटिसेंट. कोई लंबा सवाल पूछेंगे, वो एक दो शब्दों में जवाब देके फिर चुप हो जाएंगे. So much of his time even now is just in silence actually even now. दूसरा ये जो अजंचा वाली बात है, अगेन आई थिंक उसमें ये भी बात सामने आती है ना कि ऑलरेडी ही इज इट्स क्वाइट क्लियर टू हिम कि क्या करना है. सो इन दैट सेंस द माहौल ऑफ वटपापोंग जो डिस्क्राइब किया गया इज बीइंग यूज्ड यू नो फॉर 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 व्हाटएवर it is that needs to be done.
I had an occasion, a privilege of meeting him at least couple of times while he was here in Delhi, and also to the land that was being bought in the monastery one. So he would talk to you, never looking at you. And you will, I always felt that he was engrossed in himself, but he was talking to you and he was meeting you. So it was a very different kind of experience I had when I met him, whatever 2 or 3 times that I had the privilege. And you could see that he was to himself. That was very, very typical of Ajahn Liem, which I have not seen anywhere else.